Good evening, everyone. Sorry for being a little late. My name is Robert Cagnetta, and this is a meeting of the South Kingstown of Rhode Island Zoning Board of Review. Members present tonight are Thomas Daniels, the Vice Chairman, William Rosen, Arlene Hicks, and alternates Brian DuPont and Bill McDonald. Also present are Amy Goins, South Kingstown Special Legal Counsel, Jamie Gorman, South Kingstown Building and Zoning Official, and Jessica Spency, Administrative Support Associate. The board is made up of 8 people with 5 of us regular voting members. A minimum of 4 members are necessary to be present to vote. In the event that regular members are absent or recused, an alternate will step in. No more than 5 members are entitled to a vote, and at least 3 voting members are needed to grant the requested relief. Tonight, the voting members will be myself, Mr. Daniels, Mr. Rosen, Ms. Hicks, and Mr. DuPont. Correct? Okay. Applicants are here for either a dimensional or a use variance or a special use permit. The board is a quasi-judicial board created on the South Kingstown Ordinance pursuant to state statutes. We don't follow strict rules of evidence, and we operate in what we believe to be in a fair and equitable manner. We try to let everyone speak unless you get carried away or it's deemed not to be relevant. So in the interest of time, please try to be brief and on point. We do our best not to argue and keep things civil, and we try to start the last petition by 10 o'clock. After we introduce your petition, please step up to the microphone, adjust the microphone as necessary, and there's a little red light with a person on it, and you want to make sure that red light is on. And if it starts to squeal and you're not talking, you can just hit that red light button on and off at your will. But it probably will squeal as many of us, if more than one person has their mic on. You'll then be asked to take an oath to tell the truth. After that, you can present your petition with any witnesses to testify in support of the application. The board will then ask you or your witnesses questions. After the petitioner has presented their testimony, anyone with questions in support of or opposition to the petition can step forward to the microphone. You will identify yourself, be sworn in, and present your testimony with follow-up questions from the board. Please do not direct your questions or comments to the petitioner or any other witnesses. The board will direct questions to them after the comment period. So after the hearing, all the testimony, the board members will discuss the application and the evidence presented. Board members will ask a lot of questions, and there's a good reason. We cannot grant anything we choose. There are rules to follow per the South Kingstown Ordinance. So you must give testimony to support certain facts to allow the request to be approved. Tonight we have dimensional variances and special use permits on the agenda. For a dimensional variance, you must present evidence that your hardship is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or the structure, but it is not due to the general characteristic of the surrounding area. That your hardship is not the result of any prior action on your part, and that granting the variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area, and that your hardship by the denial of this variance will amount to more than a mere inconvenience. That means the relief that you're seeking is minimal to reasonably enjoy the permitted use of the property for the use you're asking for. For a special use permit, you must present the evidence that the request is specifically authorized by the zoning ordinance. So somewhere in our zoning ordinance, it has to say it is allowed, or else we do not have the power to grant it. The request meets all the criteria in the zoning ordinance that authorizes that special use, and that the request will not alter the general characteristic of the surrounding area, nor will it impair the purpose or the intent of the zoning ordinance. And we'll help you along if you have any questions or just need a little bit of guidance. We have one continuation request on the agenda for the petition of James and Joan Marasco. Is there anyone here for that? And Mr. Gorman, you did have some correspondence with their legal counsel regarding this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I did speak with both the architect for the project, who was out of the country at the time, as well as it sounded like he wouldn't be able to attend this evening. And there was a conflict with, I believe, both the neighboring attorney and the petitioner's attorney. So recommended that they both agreed upon. It sounded like from the statement that the September hearing would be the best for all parties.
It sounds like they're still trying to work something out, too.
Correct.
Okay.
I can't say what those changes are, but I believe they're working on it.
Good, okay, because we asked them to do that. All right, so basically that's what they said when they sent us a letter. Mr. Resnick, representing the applicant, asked for the September 18th, 2024 date. Any discussion on this from anyone? All right, so I'll make a motion to continue the matter of Marasco to September 18th, 2024. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rosen. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, excellent. Also, we wanted to ask, is someone here for Lawrence Hebson right now? Not yet? Okay. So we will wait on them. All right, so right now we're going to do the continuation for the petition of James and Margaret Silgado of 4060 Tower Hill Road, Wakefield, Rhode Island, 02879, for a special use permit and dimensional variance under the zoning ordinance as follows. The applicant is seeking to legally establish the outdoor storage area associated with the non-conforming use, which is a wholesale trade in outdoor storage located on the premises. Expansion will result in a 19,600 square foot outdoor storage area where 3,100 square feet is the maximum allowed by special use permit. Dimensional relief is 16,500 square feet. That's requested. The lot size is 2.4 acres. The special use permit and dimensional variance is required per the zoning ordinance section 203, special use permit for addition, enlargement, expansion, or intensification, and section 907 are standards of relief. The owner of the property are James and Margaret Silgado for premises located at 4060 Tower Hill Road, South Kingstown. Assessors map 34-3, lot 2, and it's zoned R80. The owners of the property are James and Margaret Silgado for the premises located at 4060 Tower Hill Road, South Kingstown. Assessors map 34-3, lot 2, and is zoned R80. For this, we have the application signed and dated June 14th, 2024. The owner authorization form signed and notarized June 14th. Site plan prepared by Catanzaro Design Group LLC and dated June 7th. Commercial open storage expansion analysis prepared by Pimentel Consulting, Inc., dated June 25th. Revised commercial open storage expansion analysis prepared by Pimentel Consulted, dated June 28th, or July 28th, excuse me. And then we have 3 correspondences from James F. Stone of 201 Torrey Road with photos dated of July 6th. Kate Montgomery, 223 Torrey Road, dated July 12th. And James F. Stone of 201 Torrey Road with photos dated July 24th, 2024. Okay. Who is here for this? Is that on? Is your red light on? Excellent, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the zoning board. Edward Pimentel for the record. I was just on the phone with counsel. He got caught in traffic. He's running a little late, so I'm asking permission of this board if we could perhaps put one agenda item ahead of ours, awaiting his arrival.
Yeah, are folks here from Samson's Automotive right now? You are, excellent. Okay, so we'll put it off until we'll hear that first.
Okay, thank you.
You are. Oh, see, I didn't have the mic on, so it doesn't count. So next we have the petition of Sampson's Automotive LLC, 2544 South County Trail, West Kingston, Rhode Island, 02892 for a special use permit under the zoning ordinance as follows. The applicant is seeking a limited sale of vehicles associated with the existing automotive service station, which is deemed an intensification of a non-conforming use. The lot size is 2.4 acres. It's a special use permit, which is required per the zoning ordinance section 203. special use permit for addition, enlargement, expansion, or intensification in Section 907 Standards of Relief. Owner of the property is SD Property LLC for the premises located at 2544 South County Trail, South Kingstown, Assessors Map 13, Lot 27, and is zoned R200. Sorry. So for this, we only have the application signed and dated July 17th of this year. Owner authorization form signed and notarized June 12th. Letter from the attorney, James Callahan, labeled attachment to the application and dated March 19th, 2024. 200-foot radius map, legal notice, and notarized affidavit of mailing. Good evening.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Callahan.
Chair Cagnetta. Good to see you and the members of the board again. James Callahan, Callahan & Callahan, 3 Brown Street in Wickford. Here tonight again on behalf of SD Property LLC, the owner of 2544 South County Trail, and the applicant Sampson's Automotive LLC. With me tonight is the son-father team of Brett Sampson and Robin Sampson. Brett is the principal of Sampson's Automotive LLC, and Robin is a quasi-business manager, I believe. I think it's fair to say, but they're a good team. For a little background, Brett and Sampson's Automotive is a true Rhode Island small business success story. Brett started his auto repair and maintenance business in Quonset in 2009. He actually opened his first garage the day after he finished high school on Tower Hill Road in North Kingstown. He later learned more about insurance and things like that, but that's beyond us. Due to Brett's hard work, the business has expanded each year. The work involves both automotive and commercial repair, including brakes, oil, hydraulic hose repair, and heavy-duty truck repair. They also sell tires and can basically do anything for your car that's needed. At this point, they own 2 locations in South Kingstown, but we are only dealing with 2544 South County Trail. You probably know the location. If you are going down 138, take a right onto South County Trail. It's the business to your almost immediate right. It's a R200 zone, but it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. We don't have any site plans or anything for you tonight because we're not making any changes to the exterior or basically the interior. We're just here because we're asking for a special use permit to allow for the wholesale sale of vehicles. No retail sales at all, no signs, no advertising, no nothing. This is just for Brett in case, in the event, and it happens a couple times a year, someone comes in, they don't want to repair their vehicle, so Brett purchased the vehicle for a certain amount, say $1,000, and he can sell that vehicle to auction, which is wholesale, like Copart up on Route 3 at Exeter, I believe. You can see it on the highway and also on Route 3. So he has a license already, but that applies to Quonset only. We'd like to transfer that license here. We need zoning permission from you to show that to the dealer's board, and also there are some requirements where we need 2,400 square feet of space, like the building itself, but that won't be used for any auto sales or any walk-in sales or anything like that. It's just purely wholesale sales, and we ask that if you would approve this, that be a condition, that there's no retail sales. With that, I'd ask Brett Sampson to come up and tell you a bit about himself and the business.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Come on up. Just state and spell your name, please.
My name is Brett Sampson. That's BRETTSAMPSON.
And you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Go ahead, Mr. Callahan.
And Brett, you are the principal of Sampson Automotive,
Yes.
and the property we're discussing here tonight is 2544 South County Trail.
Yes, sir.
And can you describe the business you operate on site?
Day to day, we basically do regular auto repair and maintenance. We do state inspections, we do tires, alignments, brakes, etc. That's basically it.
And on occasion, do you have customers come with vehicles that they don't want to pay for certain amounts of repairs, so you end up buying the vehicle from that customer as part of your, not day-to-day, but on occasion business?
Yes, a small part of my business, I would say, is basically that. Sometimes people just call me very simply out of the blue and just say, hey, I've got this car sitting under a tree in my backyard and I lost the title for it. What do I do? Or I've got a vehicle that won't pass inspection because it's rotted or something along those lines. And usually what I do is I buy these vehicles from these people and then bring them on a tow truck to the auction and sell them that way. So I already do have a used car dealer's license. I just don't use it for any retail, and I'm really not interested in doing any retail for a couple of reasons, but one of which being I quite honestly don't want to have to deal with the repercussions of selling $5,000 cars to people and dealing with the comebacks and that, you know, that sort of thing. So like I said, it's a very, it's a pretty small part of the business. I don't think there's much else to add.
And part of the requirement for the dealer's license transfer is you need to show that you comply with the zoning for the town you're in here at South Kingstown, correct?
Correct.
And you need 2,400 square foot of space, which you have at 2544 South County Trail. But again, you're not going to be advertising or selling cars on site to any walk-ins or civilians. Is that fair to say?
Right, I'm certainly not planning on being like a buy here, pay here with a line of cars for sale and the flags and all of that stuff. That's certainly not the business that I'm interested in doing.
And you have no plans to do that in the future either?
No, I do not.
Now, is it fair to say that this use or this intensification, as limited as it is, will not affect the general character of the area or the neighborhood?
No, there would be, yes, it's safe to say. There wouldn't be any change to my business as far as the appearance or the general day-to-day operations. Quite honestly, nothing will change. So I do currently have the car dealer's license, and I have it at my location that I rent, which is in North Kingstown. And one of the final steps of moving out of there is hopefully getting the dealer's license moved to the 2544 South County Trail.
And this use will not affect the ingress or egress of any vehicles on site to any level of intensification, really, will it?
No.
And it will not affect parking on the site at all, or
No.
off-site?
No.
No effect on the trash or storage areas?
Nope.
No effect on utilities?
No.
No screening or buffering necessary because there's no cars going to be stored on site?
Correct.
And no additional signs on site for this purpose?
Right.
And no exterior lighting, no new traffic safety issues, and basically no change at all on site?
Very simply, yes. Yep.
And again, you have no objection to any condition not allowing retail sales?
That certainly doesn't bother me at all, no.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Mr. Gorman, so how do we judge if there was an intensification either through lighting, signage, or anything, balloons or whatever? Like what is it that would be considered that change to more of a retail operation?
Well, I think this is something that, you know, the license that they have through Department of Business Regulation could allow them to do retail sales. And if they're looking for a letter of zoning compliance from the town, conditions made by the board could be specific that there, be no signage or any kind of retail sales or advertisement of such to help. I mean, the applicant stated that there would be no visible changes, but perhaps.
Do we need to codify that in sort of the decision, or is it implied based on the application?
That would be a condition, sorry. That would be a condition of the decision. So did I hear the DBR issues a blanket sales license that would authorize retail and wholesale?
I don't think they make a distinction.
Okay, all right. So yes, then we would have to make a restriction, no retail sales on the decision, if that's what the board wants to do.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Board members, questions of this witness?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Callahan, you have a site plan by any chance?
We don't have a site plan. Again, there's no changes at all to the site on any level.
Well, it's a requirement, isn't it?
I think we discussed possibly waiving that requirement. Maybe that was verbally, but I don't think we submitted one.
I think the letter requests the waiver, Mr. Callahan's letter, request a waiver from the board, I believe.
Okay. How many vehicles do you anticipate at one time? I'll ask that to the applicant. What's the maximum you figure you might have there?
As far as vehicles that I would have
For wholesale.
one at a time, because I put them on the tow truck and bring them to the auction as they come.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Callahan, you did mention in your letter, you said the request will not increase the size of the building on the site, will not require any setback or dimensional variance, will not change the appearance of the facility in any way. No for sale signs, no flags or banners or material that would advertise auto sales. So it's in the letter, but he's already written it very nicely for us. Any other questions, board members, of this witness?
There's a 2,400 square foot requirement. What's that for?
The dealer's application, and I have a copy for you if you'd like to take a look, it just requires that the total square footage of the building and outside area, if property is owned by the dealership, be 2,400 square feet minimum size in total. It's just a requirement they have. And like I said, we're not going to have a showroom. We just need to show they have a building that size, and that'll qualify.
Inside and outside minimum, 2,400 in, 2,400 out, I'm pretty sure.
Right. So you just need to show that minimum square footage, which we do have.
I guess I'm a little confused. That's the minimum size that the business has to be, or the place where the supposed retail sales or wholesale sales are supposed to take place?
The application says the measurements of the building to be used should be a total of 2,400 square foot minimum. If you have a body shop, it must be 4,100 square foot or larger. But again, we're not using any aspect of the building for sales. It's just an odd requirement. I don't know exactly why.
So what's the square footage of the present building?
It is, the lot area is 104,000 square feet, and the building itself is just over 2,400 square feet.
It sounds like that might be a licensing requirement that I think this board could disregard, and you can focus on, and you should focus on, how the applicant describes this, the addition of wholesale sales as limited as described will have an effect on the property. That way we don't have to worry about how the DBR enforces its own licensing requirements.
Okay, Amy, you put it just correct. I was just wondering if that was the 2,400 square foot was the requirement for the sale of the wholesale sale.
It sounds like it may be, but I don't think this board necessarily needs to worry about how DBR interprets that provision.
Okay.
One condition of approval could be, compliance with any and all DBR regulations. And that's something that is implied, whether or not we state it on the decision, but you certainly can put that as a condition of approval.
Right, even if we get approval from you, we still have to get the license from DBR, which we think will happen, but it may not. I don't know.
Okay. You say you rent from a North Kingstown facility, and you're moving from there. When are you moving?
We will be officially moved out at the end of this year.
Okay. And you just recently opened a business on 138 in West Kingston.
That is where we do truck repair. We basically do.
Okay,
yeah.
so there's a separation of the type of business that you do between,
We do basically like heavy trucks and some trailers and stuff like that on the at the 138 location and at the Route 2 location, which is the one that we're discussing. We do basically regular automobiles.
and you're
Cars.
not implying that there's going to be any wholesale from that business, correct?
At the 138 location?
Yeah,
No, sir.
okay,
Right, this application is only applies to South County Trail.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members? No? Okay. Do you want to add anything else?
Thank you, no.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Sampson. Did you want to call up anybody else, or is that it? Sorry.
No, thank you.
Oh.
We rest.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay. Is there anyone out in the audience that is here for this petition to speak in for or against? No? Okay. Mr. Howe, could I ask one question? Could you just turn off that mic? Thank you. All right. Any thoughts on this, board members? It seems pretty straightforward. It's a pretty isolated lot. It's actually a pretty big lot. But no changes. They're looking to basically maintain sort of the business as is. I think just if whoever's going to make the motion, just be mindful of, they can certainly make improvements to it and so forth. But it's just a matter of if we want to restrict how they're promoting the sales itself. So does anyone want to give it a shot for a motion? I've taken some notes. I can do it if. No, I can do it. Okay, excellent.
Okay. At a meeting, just a second here, second. Okay.
Tell a joke.
The petition of Sampson's Automotive LLC was read into the record by the chairman. They're looking for a special use permit to allow them to do some sale of vehicles, but only wholesale types of transactions will take place. And the zoning ordinance that they're looking to have a variance on essentially is ordinance section 203, which involves additions and enlargement, expansion, and intensification of the business. Speaking for the petitioner was the attorney Callahan, and representing himself was Brett Sampson, the owner of the business. There were no other members of the audience that spoke in opposition or in favor of this petition. And as a result, I'm going to move the acceptance of this special use permit. The board finds that the special use is specifically authorized by this ordinance because nothing is really going to change as far as the business is. All we're going to do is put a restriction on there that the sale of any automobiles or trucks should take place only on a wholesale arrangement and presumably to auctioner at the auction house. the board finds that the special use meets all the criteria set forth in the subsection of this ordinance authorizing such special use. Simply because there's really no change occurring here. And all they're asking for is an exception to the section 203, so that they can, once in a while, and rather rarely actually, to sell a vehicle or a truck. And I'm not going to go through the rest of this because the attorney already did mention, not only in his memo to the board, but during his presentation, things about ingress and egress and what's going to be changing, parking, lighting, all that type of stuff as such. And let me just add that the restriction we're going to be putting on this is that the sale of any vehicle or truck or whatever be only of the wholesale variety and restricted to such, and that it probably will only occur one at a time over an extended period of time. So I would move approval of this petition.
And Bill, one additional thing to note in the motion for this one, because a license from the state, the DBR is required, this one would have a 2-year expiration.
Okay, yeah, and so it will have a 2-year expiration date associated with it.
Okay, motion is made by Mr. Rosen. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. DuPont. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Rosen?
Aye.
Mr. DuPont? Mr. Daniels?
Aye.
Ms. Hicks?
Aye.
Mr. Cagnetta? Aye. Motion passes. Good luck, guys. You're welcome. Of course.
Yeah, good luck to you.
All right, Dad. Well done. Okay.
I just want to make a suggestion here, because
Please.
I don't want to force the applicant to proceed without the attorney. Could you get an E ETA?
Yes. So at exactly 6:21, he told me he was 20 minutes out. So he should be in the next couple of minutes. Do you want me to start the testimony? Because I think he'll be arriving.
I would suggest we hold it
Okay.
for, the board 5 or 10 minutes, however long. Okay. Yeah.
Why don't we just take like a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back.
We have another one.
Is there, is Hepson here yet, though? No, okay.
We
Nope.
have another one, I think. Flip the page over.
Okay, we're going to continue with the petition of James and Joan Marasco. Nope, start over. We're going to continue with the petition of James and Margaret Salgado, 4060 Tower Hill Road, Wakefield, Rhode Island, 02879. And I read it into the record already, or no? Should I go through all of it again?
It's already been read into the record.
So, and we also read all of the documents as well. So, okay, good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the courtesy. We're here on, first I believe we're dealing with a dimensional variance.
Yes.
Permit,
Yep.
for property on Tower Road. It's an existing business, it's been there for several years.
Yep.
Very sorry about that. I think I articulated on the record a lot of the facts about the premises when we were here back in March, I believe. But we're taking a different posture. We're seeking a dimensional variance. And I have Ed Pimentel here, who has visited the property. He's an expert in the field. And I'm going to turn it over to him to share with you.
Good evening, Mr. Patel. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Excellent. So please just spell and state your name for us.
For the record, Edward Pimentel, that's P as in Paul, Imentel. Mr. Chairman, I think the way probably to work this, so it be the most condensed and to the point, is to use the standards for the granting of the special use permit and then the burdens for the variance as a template. And the reason why I'm saying that is when I was asked to get involved in this project, and I also want to offer an apology to this board and to the neighbors, because I also asked council to get a couple of continuances. He was getting the package put together. I wanted to have an opportunity to meet with the property owner, get a real understanding of the business. And quite honestly, because I wear what Jamie's hat is during the day and saw the condition of property, because I've been by this property many times. I've been up and down Route 1 for many, many decades. I said, I need to work with the property owner to get some things cleaned up and corrected, because I could see probably what the concerns were.
Sure.
So I offer an apology for the request for the continuances. They were my fault. So I really want to use the regulations as a template, and I think it'll be the cleanest and the smoothest way of doing so. So first, let's first get into the special use permit, because then as one of them, it'll address and get into the burdens for the dimensional. So first and foremost, why are we here? So it's, why are we allowed to pursue a special use permit, first and foremost? So section 203A of your regulations, which go back to the non-conforming use of the property, allows an intensification by special use permit. It's very common in many communities, actually, because there are a lot of businesses been around for many, many years. They're historical, they're well-established. For whatever reason, they remain zoned in a certain manner that keeps them non-conforming, but we want to see an opportunity for growth. So it's a very common practice. Even in your comprehensive plan, it details that this property has been commercially used for many, many decades. So, and it allows up to a 50% of an intensification. The question becomes is, what is 50% of the intensification? I understand why your zoning official was stuck to doing what he had to do. It's difficult to determine what the historical pattern has been in the open storage. It's easier to just take the physical foot of the building and say that's what you're entitled from a 50% of growth of that. It's probably something I would have done too. But I wanted to get a real hands-on of what is the historical pattern of this property. I went back and looked at aerials dating back to the 1930s, because there's a lot of aerials out there from different sources, from Department of Environmental Management, Department of Transportation, etc. Many of them were just too grainy that I couldn't in good faith say, is that open storage? What is that? The earliest one that I could really feel confident was, and this just starts on page 15 of 26, is the 2003 and 2004, which clearly shows that there was open storage as a component of this operation. And then there's the tree line, and you don't know if there's some to the right of it or not. But the reason why this was important from my perspective is I didn't feel like to argue from the point is, you shouldn't really be out there, what are you doing? Open storage appears to have been a historical component of this operation for at least minimum 20 years, if not more. And then that leads to slightly of an argument, 50% of what? Could the degree of relief we be seeking, although it's quite a variance, and I know there is no least relief anymore, but could the variance be a little smaller than what we're seeking? That was the reason for that, and to establish historical pattern. The reason why the open storage grew to the way it grew, as has been conveyed to me, and as it impacted many industries, was during the COVID period. As this board knows now, office use is no longer required because most people are working from home. That's why we have a plethora of empty office spaces. COVID impacted many industries, and it impacted theirs. What happened was, when supply chains went berserk, they kept more equipment on site, they kept more parts on site. It was even difficult to dispose of. That's why, from a pictorial perspective, I next went to the photo that happened during the COVID period, and you can see how it grew, rather unsightly and uncontrolled, and then, of course, to the current one, where it's more regulated and under control. And then what I've been working with the property owner is, look, obviously, we can't have a visual nightmare out there. It is surrounded by residences down Torrey Road. The applicant does own the adjacent residence, so that kind of helps to some degree. And to the north, it's pretty much where the vast mature forest of the vast portion of the property is maintained in a natural state. It's a 2.4 acre property, of which less than 25% is dedicated to the business and the open storage. And we're prepared, if the board sees fit, to grant us to accept the condition that this be maintained, that 75% limited to just buffering and visual screening, and also obviously to control within the fence line. To that extent, I've been working with them to get everything within the fence line and to also lower the stature. If the board has been out there, I'm sure you have, they have some huge racks that was above the fence line, and I've been working with them to get it below the fence line. So from that perspective, we feel that's appropriate. We feel we can maintain in character with the neighborhood. So I went through all those, the off-street parking and the loading, and really the biggest concern I would think from the neighbor's perspective is the real visual screening and buffering. And we believe if we can keep it behind the fence line and maintain it as such, it'll be an appropriate use of the property and allow this business to grow in a manner that it can continue to operate given the unique aspects of what's going on now since COVID and the supply chain issues. So the next one would be the 50% limitation. I think there may be some argument as to what that degree of relief is, but it would still be a substantial variance. I can't deny that. We did prepare a site plan which documents the degree of relief. If you add the footprint of the building and the open storage as it exists, it'd be under 25% of the property. We show the buffering and all the trees that we're prepared to accept as a condition of approval for visual screening and buffering, keeping it away from the residences going down Torrey Road and from the residents across Torrey Road and even from across the street, although there's some industries there too. The applicant does out front bring the equipment out in the morning for display purposes, sales purposes, marketing purposes, and then immediately brings it in. That's documented in my photos. I've been by this property day, evenings, weekends, to make sure he does that and to show that he kept cleaning it up, and he has been working with me faithfully. And then I went into all the specifics of the screening and the buffering and what we feel we can do to ensure that this is maintained in a compatible, compliant neighborhood manner that hopefully appeases the neighbors. Getting into the burdens, we believe the hardship is due to the unique characteristics of this business and the property and the facility. Things have changed since COVID. They need this open storage. It would be nice to expand maybe the building footprint and to try to bring some in, but that would take a whole other act. We've actually discussed maybe going council for zone change, partial zone change, coming up with different ideas, but in the meantime, it's just something we need immediate relief on. Number two, that the hardship is not prior action of the applicant. Well, obviously the open storage intensification resulted from the applicant, but what we feel is it really tied back to the nature of the business and what's happened, and it was unavoidable. And then finally, I get back to the same thing about altering the character of the neighborhood, which this burden ties into the standard of the special use. We really feel that we could clean up this property, make it compatible, and not be a visual blight in this neighborhood, impact the neighbors by keeping everything behind the fence line. We really feel we can accomplish this. We hope the board gives us an opportunity to do so.
So let me just interrupt for a sec. So you're referring to this site plan right here? as the proposed sort of edges of the footprint?
Yeah, and it's on page 16 of my report.
Yep, okay. Okay, and do we have the historical size superimposed on that as well? I know that's, you had a,
It was difficult to do. It was difficult to overshadow what the extent of that was. It was just purely for the purposes of documenting that there's been some degree of open storage always associated with this business. I would agree with Mr. Gorman. How do you document that number? I don't know. So the safest number is to take the physical footprint of the commercial facility and apply the 50% to that. It's something I would do too, because even though you can see there's open storage, what is that measurement? I don't know.
right, but on here, you're saying it's about 19,600 is what the request is for.
Yeah, that measurement is the entirety of the open storage, as if no open storage ever existed, and we're introducing it today.
Is that the, where the fences are right now?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, and Mr. Gorman, is that within your 50% or no? Is, like, what are you considering the
So
starting point?
The starting point, I considered the building footprint itself, and then 50% of that would have amounted to, I believe it's in the notice, but it's a significant discrepancy, so relief of over, it could be argued because we don't have the outdoor storage that, the applicant's team is saying was there, that defined line, but certainly a relief of close to 19,000 square feet is, it could be give or take 1,000 square feet, but I don't think much more than that.
I'm not disagreeing with Mr. Gorman, because we can't figure out, if you look at that page, if you look at the photo, right, on page 15, it looks like it extends out, what does it extend out, 20, 30, 40 feet, and it covers that whole square. I mean, there's some degree of existing open storage. What that is, I couldn't state either. But why I also thought it was important was because for the following reason. Because we also have to prove that it falls within line that we're entitled to at least pursue 50% of some use. And what it states in the language, I want to quote it correctly. Is that it states that shall not exceed 50% in excess of the existing floor area, land, or intensity of the use. And if you look at what the use this is defined as by your use code, it's wholesale trade with outdoor storage. So the use category itself that we're protected under, as an integral part of it, knows that there's outdoor storage associated with it. So it's not like we introduce something that would otherwise be an additional prohibited use in conjunction with already a non-conforming use. And that was very important to me, because then we start talking about, do you need a use variance here? And now we're talking a whole other set of burdens.
Right.
So we didn't need that because it is protected under that land use category. There is an integral part, and therefore I feel confident that we can seek it by special use permit. And then I feel confident that it's 50% of whatever that is. What the measurement of that open storage is, I do not know. That I'm sincere. I can't, so I'd have to agree with Mr. Gorman. The only safe bet is to go with what the physical footprint of the building is, which is, and I did those calculations, the building is 6,200 square feet, so 50% of that would be approximately 3,100. So, and we're at 19.8, so it's quite a percentage larger, the 31 to 19.8,
Right, so, and that photograph is from when?
2003.
2003. Is that tree line where the edge of that area is? Is that the edge of the storage?
Oh, you mean as of right now?
Well, no, back in 2000.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. That was the other thing. Could it be a little bit more under there? I don't know. I'd be guessing. It was just interesting that at least I could document that there's been historical usage for open storage rather than, you couldn't find any historical use for open storage, and all of a sudden, boom, there's 19,800 square feet of open storage you're asking for. So obviously, it's been an integral component of this operation, even going back at least 20 years. It grew since 2020. We can't deny that. Like I said, COVID had an impact. They kept more equipment on board. And it was haphazard, as you can tell by the photos.
Sure.
Because all of a sudden, things started to unraveling, the supply chain, they just kept more equipment, more parts.
Right.
And what really created the problem was that then it started to spill out to the front.
Sure.
And it was unsightly, no question.
So,
Can't
but,
deny it.
I mean, it should have constricted by now, though. So because you're also saying that, like, they grew to this during
Yeah.
COVID, but they want to stay at where that growth was too.
That is the permission we're asking for, yes.
Right, but
yes.
there could be a constriction now because there isn't a need to have as much inventory because the supply chain is sort of better.
I've actually spoke to the property owner about that operation. They're starting to get some things under control.
Right.
There may be some capability to reduce that to some small degree, but they said it's just things have changed and supply chain issues are an ongoing issue. They're always going to have to keep more on hand either way. So, but we feel we can keep it unsightly behind the fence line, below the statute of the fence line, maintain the others as a condition of approval. We're talking 75%. Well, I mean, outside of the parking lot too. I don't want to mislead this board, but at least 50% plus of this property is forested. And we're willing to accept a condition to maintain it forested, not develop it, not subdivide it. It's residentially zoned. You know, we're asking permission to maintain historical business, been around for 60 plus years, upwards of 70 years. That grew outdoors. We can't deny that.
Right, but, so basically by default, since there isn't any evidence, Mr. Gorman, of a existing, like of a size outside, the only thing that you can go on, you can't go off the assumption of a size, you have to say it's 50% of the building. Is that kind of what happened?
Correct. I mean, this is 2003, 2004, but I also believe in 97 there was an aerial included in the, which is this photo here, which shows the area cleared, but it is granular.
Right.
It's tough to say that there
If it's
was
grass or-
storage, and was this a weekend? Were they, it's a snapshot in time, but it looks much different than.
Which is still
This
how many,
photo.
I'm sorry. It's just still how many years, that last photograph is how many years after there was an establishment as a, getting the grandfathering of the business.
Yeah, so the building was constructed in '62, and I didn't go over the historical businesses that were preceded, the Silgatos, but it was always a similar use to the property with outdoor storage, but to the extent that it is now, the aerials prior to 2003 don't show that, in my opinion.
So when, and I might have asked this before, when does the special use requirements kick in for this property? What year was that? Like, was it 70s or?
When was it determined to be non-conforming?
Yeah, like when would the clock, quote unquote, start of the 50%? Like what year?
Prior to '76, essentially. There were different regulations at that time as well. So, but yeah.
So technically, that was the time when the footprint was locked, like in terms of what was expected of them to stay within.
Yeah, we
saying
don't
that
have
very
any,
awkwardly.
there's no aerials that you
Right.
can make
Okay.
a determination from that time
And the
either.
only thing we have is 2003-ish. That's kind of a grainy photograph. Got it. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody have any questions for, just relative to this, just to kind of clear this? Go ahead, Ms. Hicks.
I'm not sure how relevant my question is to what Mr. Cagnetta was just saying, but if we could go back to the site plan, this picture, would you be able to go over to the slide and sort of outline the 19,600 square foot outdoor storage area? I'd like to know exactly where it is.
It's the line that says fence that goes 140 feet.
fence line.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and so all four sides would be fenced in?
They're all fenced in, they're all fenced in now.
They're all fenced in now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
All right.
thank you.
Mr. Daniels?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, there was a change or an intensification in the business at some point when they added a pest control operation. Was that allowed by right? Was there a special use permit? How did that come about?
I was able to find a recorded decision from the zoning board, I believe in 2007, for the sale of sheds and construction of and display of sheds and a sign, reconstruction of the sign, but for the accessory business of Narragansett Pest Control, I believe it is what it is. I didn't see any approval. I couldn't find approval from the zoning board. It may be there, but I just couldn't find that.
So it could have been allowed by right?
It could be considered accessory to the business that they conduct there, but an exterminator, I'm not sure really if it's all inclusive of the building or if part of that storage is associated with the pest control.
Do you have any insight on that, Mr. Pimentel?
No, I'd have to refer that to the operator, because what I saw out there was just various pieces of equipment. I wouldn't be able to tell if it all belonged just to the outdoor power, so that'd be something I'd have to refer to the operator and the owner.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions I may ask. The fenced-in area, is that visible from any of the neighbors can see through that or over it?
The fencing is solid. There were some racks that were above the fence line, and I've been working with the property owner to bring those racks below the fence line.
Okay, and how high is that fence?
6 feet.
How high?
6.
6 feet.
I mean, if the board wanted higher, I know that sometimes there's limitations in the regulations as to height of fencing, so.
I think because that's both of us. Would there be any thoughts on mature shrubbery?
We actually discussed that, myself and the property owner, and because it was the first thought I had, I said, a fence is 6 feet. Not only is it not too high, but it's still fencing, right? What we want to see is natural vegetation from the municipal side of government, which I wear a hat or two. And I said, would you be willing to do more plantings and even screen in the fence, never mind the stuff behind the fence? And he said yes.
Okay, and the outside storage, is it machinery, equipment, materials? What type of, no hazardous waste, I would assume?
I didn't see any hazardous waste, but it was all the other three. New equipment, parts for equipment, and then there was an area of stuff to get disposed of, to get picked up, removed off-site.
Okay, and the drawing just went down, but the abutting piece of property, once over a little bit, Jamie.
To the Torrey Road
Beyond
side?
that property line there, that is the residential property, the single-family home, am I correct?
Yeah, the applicant owns that home.
That they own?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Who owns 241?
Marissa and Jesse Silgado, it's the son and daughter-in-law of the applicant.
Because I remember going by there and there was stuff stored on that property. Is that person an owner of this business?
It's the son and the daughter-in-law, but I believe they mitigated the.
Yeah.
Oh,
the equipment.
so it's a relationship?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
But regardless of that, it is residentially zoned, and that's one of the things we said, everything has to be
No,
associated
I
with this.
understand
Yeah.
that. I just wonder how a commercial property got into a residential zone originally.
Oh, are you talking about this parcel or the adjacent one? I'm sorry.
Well, the adjacent one is residential.
Right, that was something,
But how did the commercial property get into a residential zone? It obviously came before the ordinance.
Right. What my understanding was is that the son and daughter-in-law purchased the property about 10 years ago, and the son works at the business. He
Okay,
parked
wait a
his
second.
vehicles.
I'm not on that.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh,
You
so you're talking about
you satisfied that question.
Oh, you're talking about the property in question?
Yes, the property
Oh, yeah,
in question.
It predated zoning.
It predate, I realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That means it's grandfathered in,
Right.
right?
Sometimes, when a future land use map is drawn up, consideration is given to what's there now. Or, I'm sorry, I should have said, sometimes when a zoning map is drawn up, consideration is given to what's there now, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
So all I can surmise is, when this property was zoned as it was in the 70s when zoning was adopted, or when it became non-conforming, it was zoned without regard to an existing business.
Yeah, so I went back and looked even at earlier iterations of the comp plan. The future land use map still, remains supportive of the current residential designation, but in the existing map, of all the comp plan iterations, it always shows it as being commercially used in every iteration. So there's just been no desire to want to say, look, it's commercial, it's been here long enough, it's going to remain commercial, let's give it a commercial classification, and then you can come back around and rezone it in accordance with the law. I guess we could go pursue a comp plan amendment and zone change, but that's not what the town has done. But the business has been historically there in every iteration. I saw it in all the maps, so.
Okay. For the moment, I will,
Ms. Hicks, you have another question?
Okay, another question. If this were granted,
Yes.
would that guarantee to the abutters, the neighbors, that now all of the outdoor equipment would be contained within that fenced-in area? And I understand, that during the day there are sample snow blowers or lawn mowers out in the front. I don't know that that's a concern of the neighbors. I think it's more the things that you see being stored,
Absolutely.
the vehicles. I realize
Absolutely.
you're not going to pull the trucks into the
No
fenced-in
question.
area, but I see that the trucks have crept over onto the residential lot, and I know that at the beginning of this process was a concern. So is there a guarantee that everything will be contained, that the trucks will go where trucks should live on the property?
Sure. Obviously, from the Torrey Road side is what we have the most concern and consideration for. That's what needed to be cleaned up. Been working with them to clean up. It's been their promise to me that if I get this, I really need it. If I get it, they understand. I got to keep it behind the fence line, and we got to keep it as visually unobtrusive as possible. That's all I can offer on the record. That's what they've promised to do, and that's the intent. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you're basically, what you're suggesting is that since we don't really know what the size of the exterior use was at its forming, that you want to use the space that you currently occupy. So it's not even about, we don't even know what it's an expansion of, you just want to expand to this size, basically.
That is all I can ask. I would be guesstimating as to what the square footages were of the 2003, number one. And even then, further from a legal perspective, was that even locked in from the day it became non-conforming? So I can't make those statements on the record with any accuracy, only to say that there's been some degree of open storage. So at least I think everybody knows that that's been an integral part of at least 2 decades, if not more. And therefore, knowing this wasn't just something that popped up overnight. But a zoning board can only grant specific and not general relief. So the only number that we can get specific about is what Mr. Gorman has calculated. So you're looking at a 16,700 square foot variance over what we're entitled under the 50% rule.
Right, using the building as your
Correct.
start.
Correct.
Yeah, so, and during this increased outdoor storage, was there additional needs to accommodate sort of this increase in customer in terms of volume? Were there more spaces needed? Was there issues of I don't know, trash, or was there any other sort of issues related to the fact now that you're storing more stuff on site?
I can only convey what the operator conveyed to me, so I'd rather, I don't want to speak out of turn
Okay.
and answer the question incorrectly. So.
I can ask them that.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right. Any other questions, board members, of this witness? Or expert, I should say.
As I remember, in one of the abutters, or one of the residents that lives down Torrey Road, they mentioned that there used to be a tree line along the fence off the back of that property, and that was taken down by these owners. Is that correct or incorrect?
If it was taken down, it was before my involvement, because
Okay,
what's shown on the 2024 aerial in my report is how I've seen it since I've gone back there. So I couldn't answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Anything to add at this point?
No, all set.
You okay? All right.
And if you'd like me to have one of the operators as a witness to address some of those questions, I ask them to bring them down.
Yeah, I mean, because then we're going to open it up to some of the neighbors and so forth. So why don't they come up and just tell us what they know?
One at a time, whoever wants to do it.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for all
Just
being here.
state and spell your name, please.
Jesse Siligato, Jesse Siligato.
And you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Nothing but the truth.
All right. And you guys going to speak together, or you want to, you can speak together, it's fine. So why don't you come on up?
What am I speaking of? Just about the historic use and what's stored behind and the reason for what's going on.
Okay.
All right, so just state and spell your name, please.
Oh, Margaret Siligato.
And spell it.
Margaret Siligato.
And do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the
I
truth?
do, yes.
Excellent. So, go ahead, wherever you guys want to start out.
Jesse or Peggy, when did you acquire the property?
So that I wanted to bring up because they were saying we never got permission for pest control. Now, before we bought it, because when it was for sale, we met with Bill Brown, who was the building inspector, and said, we have a pest control business we wanted to put here with this, and we don't want to buy this if that's going to be a problem. So we met with multiple people. I think it was zoning and everything. They said, no, it's not because it's really more of a non-chemical pest control, because a lot of what you do with maintaining your lawn affects your pest profile. So we found that the power equipment company was a way for homeowners to reduce pesticides, because we weren't really into spraying and using a lot of chemicals. But a lot of times you go to someone's house and they have carpenter ants, it's because they didn't cut down the dead tree. So the chainsaw, then people with ticks and mosquitoes, they don't cut down their tall vegetation. The weed trimmers, that helps reduce your ticks because ticks like tall grass. So a lot of the things we do in All Outdoors is to teach homeowners how to be pest-free. So we thought it was we were going to get rid of All Outdoors and just do pest control there. And we said, well, wait a minute, that's more of our non-chemical line. So by combining them, and when I talked to the town, they thought it would be good. So we got blessings to do so. And that's basically how we've run the business since 1999.
So-
That's how it started.
So there's, okay, so it wasn't, it was saying it was auxiliary then, I guess, right?
I don't know what he called it.
Okay, and by the town of that specific use, and I don't want to dig anything up, it's fine for them to have that. There's not a concern in terms of storage of equipment or anything like that. We don't even have to go over
I
that.
would say that issue wasn't even on the notice for
Perfect.
tonight, so
Okay.
let's let
I
that
know,
one
like-
be.
Let's skip it.
Well, I
Nope,
just want
that's
to make
good.
sure we didn't do it illegally.
Nope,
That
we don't need to cover it then.
was covered.
Yep, no, you guys are good.
Okay.
You're fine. So go ahead, tell us a little bit more about
Yeah,
the
so one of the
business
other
itself.
questions that the board has was, what type of operations and what type of storage is being contained in the storage area in the rear?
Sure, I can answer that. So the majority of it is the power equipment. Especially with COVID, things are getting better. But if you have a piece of equipment, you need one part, the machines can't be used. So if we're waiting for a part, we've seen 2-year lead time on a part, which is ridiculous. How do you cut your lawn? So people find other options. But that created the need for more storage. It didn't really, like, the business was already there with the customer.
So like big equipment you need to store, or is it like, you're
Like a
not just saying,
ride-on-
you
like a
don't need to
ride-on
fit a bunch of
lawnmower?
bolts? You know?
No.
Customer.
Like customers' equipment. So like some of our neighbors have the equipment, like a riding tractor.
Right.
Aeration equipment to aerate the lawn.
Oh, so their equipment ends
They
up
drop it off.
staying at your
Right,
property?
because
So
until
this
the-
isn't all just new stuff sitting out there, this is a
Most
lot
of it's not new. Most of it's
Okay.
customers' equipment. So it's
Interesting.
people in the community need the place
Got
for
it.
it to be fixed, and if it's not fixed, they can't operate it. It's a liability to the
Interesting.
landscaper, it's a liability for the homeowner.
Yep.
And
So,
they get stuck with it until we get the parts.
right.
No,
Like,
that's a very
it doesn't
important
run.
distinction.
We don't want it back until it runs.
I
Right.
wasn't even thinking of that before when you said
Like I said,
because
part-
of COVID, you have all
Parts
extra
are getting,
stuff.
parts are getting better, but
Fair.
it's still not like it used to be. 2 days, you'd order a part and you get it in 2 days. There's no such thing as 2 days, so.
And,
that-
and this has historically been a part, you guys haven't been always new equipment sales. You've always been repairing
Repairs,
equipment
right.
since you started, essentially,
That's the
right?
bulk of our business. The sales, the challenging thing is COVID also put a stressor on that, because it's like, if you don't take this, you're not getting anything.
Right.
So then the timing became off. So
And-
then you're getting snow equipment in the, like, well, even earlier than now, because if you didn't get it, it wouldn't be there come winter.
Right.
So it was a juggling match, and the manufacturers are still trying to play the game, and we're not. We're like,
But you guys aren't sort of taking on dead equipment. You're not becoming a junkyard. You know?
no, by no
Yeah,
means, no.
okay.
So what we do is, when a machine is not worth fixing, we drain the fluids out, dispose of them, and then there's not garbages anymore that you can keep on property. So it's usually a bi-yearly, we have containers we put them in.
Okay.
And then we fill that container up.
Got it. And those containers are on site?
Yes.
They're larger, like shipping container type size?
They're just crates.
Okay.
And the equipment goes in there, that's contained in the fenced-in area, and it's, when the dumpster comes, we have a machine that loads it, so no one's hurting themselves,
Right.
and it's all recycled.
Okay.
So that, it does take time to separate the plastics from the metals, otherwise that stuff just goes to the landfill. So we prefer that it get recycled.
So you're processing some stuff and storing it until it can be transferred?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's got to be a certain size load for them to.
Right. Right. And but you're not taking in things to then resell?
No, we don't do any used business. It's repairs is really it's your product. We're not, fixing up old stuff and fixing it.
Okay. Thank you.
And selling it as new.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And one of the other questions that came up is, going forward, are we going to be able to maintain the commercial use machinery and equipment within the fenced-in area?
That area should be adequate. What's deceiving from all of the pictures and layouts is that a good portion is access.
Right.
So like an ideal storage would be, a road on the edge. There's a road in the middle, so there's, to get to those areas, but it should be fine. There's an access down the middle of the whole thing, so we should be able to get to everything.
And you'll stop the bleed from one site to the other?
Yeah,
To the
so
adjacent?
that was, again, it was like unsightly, and I apologize. And I
Yep.
apologize to all the neighbors and I appreciate their patience and willingness to work with us.
Okay. And is if they're asking for this expansion, this is the last time they can ask for an expansion? Or?
Not necessarily, I'm sorry, unless they ask for and are granted the 50, they're asking for a variance because it requires an expansion over that 50% threshold, right? And in the past, the board didn't have the ability to grant this type of special use permit. You were stuck at that 50%. But as of January 1st of this year, we now have to allow applicants to ask for that. So it would limit them until such time as if they wanted to come back in the future and ask for the same type of relief, they would once again need a variance.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, obviously, a petitioner can come back as many times as they want to the zoning board. That's why we were also willing to accept as a condition of approval that area that's presently matured and comprised of mature forest and trees would be maintained at that. So that way, whether it be this property owner or future property owner comes in and says, hey, we need more, they said, wait a second, so now you're also going to violate the condition of approval, it's recorded. I think that puts kind of a double whammy on somebody thinking about asking for more relief. That's number one. Obviously, you want to limit the visual and the line of sight from the neighbors. And then thirdly, what was our thinking is, and the gentlemen have brought it up, is if we wanted to also further intensify behind the fence. Another condition of approval, which would make it even more difficult, somebody in the future asking for relief, to eliminate two conditions of approval. That was my thinking anyway.
Right, right. Okay. You guys are keeping bees back there in the wooded area, aren't you?
You gotta keep them going, yes.
Yeah, cool, very cool. Board members, any questions thus far? I didn't mean to cut you guys off, but if you've got more, do you have questions for him so far? Mr. Rosen?
I just wanted to ask that same question I did, was in one letter it says that there was a tree line beyond that fence and it was taken down.
Yes, yeah, you're correct. There were trees there. There were maples that were rotten in the middle. One of them, I can't remember the name of the storm, split, it broke our fence, and we trimmed that one. But we prune, because we have access to the customers that are arborists, we have them come and prune for health, and they're Xing a lot of the trees, but they're pruning for health. There are trees that are not going to make it another year. We had 3 branches down just in the past probably month, but we continue to, prune for health, keep the good ones. The ones that are rotten, they do have to come down because it will fall on. I did notice neighboring properties went as far to clear all the trees so that there is no risk of the trees falling. Unfortunately, that is a lot of work. And there really are limited healthy trees, which is really challenging. And some other neighbors were suggesting that we take more trees down along the property line because they were very unhealthy. And we're trying to go on the more prune for health. It's a challenge when they're so far gone. They have a expected life, and at this point they're dying. A lot of our trees, which most of the cherries they're like, we have one that's just uprooted.
Mr. Pimentel indicated that there was going to be some growth back there to cover up that fence.
Some shrubs would probably be a good idea. The challenge, we definitely can do that. I think the challenge is that it's heavily rooted with heavily mature trees. So part of planting would probably be pruning and cutting out the ones that aren't worth having there, and then planting in its place. But you have so many roots that we'd have to pull some of those roots up as well to get a good planting.
I know what you're talking about. Okay.
It gets hard to dig.
It's challenging. It's beautiful soil. That whole property, talking to some of the neighbors, all the stone walls it was farmland and it was all wide open, no trees. Could you imagine? The trees, some of the trees, there's very mature trees, and all those stone walls were built because it was farmland. So, we're not farming, but okay. It's a whole different image.
Thank you.
And just as a follow-up, because there might be some conflation between the property at 241 and 4060, were there any trees removed from 241?
So when we first purchased 241, there was trees growing into the septic system, and they were taken down. They're rotten in the middle. We did take a couple trees down over there, and besides that, it's been pruning and clearing out undergrowth. Again, I'm planning on planting. You want to be mindful of the design as well.
So you're saying it might be more, it's not necessarily possible to plant right on the property line? You might have to favor the business side? Is that what you're saying? Like, if,
For the
let's say we're going to say arborvitae.
I guess really the challenge is the purpose of the planting, like what line of sight is on visual? I don't see
I mean,
what
the
other people
screening
are
isn't
seeing.
necessarily, because you guys own the house, I mean, but the screening is for future owners, you know, just so there's a
so-
separation between the business and the residential, potentially. I'm not suggesting it, but,
There is a tenant in there, and we did talk about a nice garden that would separate it,
right. Okay.
because it's kind of a nice spot where it might not need as much watering, because
Right.
it's the lowest spot.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
One
please,
question.
Mr. DuPont.
Getting into the specifics, if shrubbery and that ends up being part of this approval process, do we have the authority to suggest a height restriction on that? I mean, a minimum height and the type of shrubbery?
We can impose, yeah, we have the authority to impose reasonable conditions, and the more specific, the better, because any condition that's vague is difficult to enforce in the future.
Yeah, it's just being reasonable, not saying you have to plant 30-foot trees to start and so forth, but,
So long.
okay. Any other
line.
questions, board members, of these witnesses? Do you guys want to add anything else relevant to this at this point?
No, I think you guys are asking good questions, and
Okay.
and
Excellent.
if you need anything else, I'm right here.
Thank you. All right. Do you want to bring up anyone else, or?
I think we covered everything, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Is there anyone out there that wants to speak on behalf of this petition, for or against? Come on up. Good evening.
I'm Karen Montgomery, Karen Montgomery.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing
I
but the truth?
do.
Excellent. So you have written a letter.
I did.
Do you want to sort of paraphrase that for us, or do you want us to read it in?
I'll just summarize, very brief.
Sure.
Okay.
Please.
I've lived at Torrey Road, 223, my husband and I, 46 years. My house is separated from all outdoors by one house, 241. I'm 223, right up there on the picture. Okay? About 8 years ago, when the Siligatos bought Joyce Brown's house, it was his own residential property with beautiful trees, gardens, and a gazebo. Situation from my side, since they bought the property, they have not lived in the house. The property has periodically been used for storage of large vehicles and industrial equipment. You can see the vehicles in this picture already. There was a row of mature, which I thought were beautiful trees. I do not know if they were diseased, which had formed a barrier between Joyce's lot and All Outdoors and Route 1. And even as last week, I noticed in the backyard, there's a large swath of land that has been cleared of all greenery, and there's another large piece of equipment there. As a result of their impact on the property, I have planted many evergreen trees, you can see, so that it will look like I don't have industrial equipment in my backyard. I hear more noise and more commercial activity from All Outdoors in Route 1, and my house has become a slightly less desirable place to be. I'm aware that this is addressing the special usage permit within the boundaries, but it seems as if I'm already living next to an expansion of All Outdoors onto the residential property. And I wanted you to know what the current usage is doing to the immediate neighborhood. I was upset with thinking that, or didn't know what to think about increasing the usage 5 times what the original usage was. I'm hearing that they have already done that increase, and so it wouldn't be more than what is already going on. So that's it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we just don't know where to start in terms of what they were using.
I understand.
And it seems like it was a little bit longer, like in the early 70s. I'm not good with time anymore. I still think the 80s was like 10 years ago. So I know that obviously you've seen some movement within the business itself.
I understand. I just want to present to you guys the impact on me.
So, and there never was anything necessarily, there wasn't any notification sent to the 241 in terms of improper use of the property as a commercial or anything like that?
No, Mr. Chairman, it was, the original notice was sent to property owners of 4060 Tower Hill Road, because it looks like it was encroaching over the line, and it sounds like the same family owned 241, so although they weren't formally noticed, that they were made aware of a town's concern.
So is there a pretty easy delineation between sort of a homeowner just parking machinery in their house versus a business sort of moving into a residential, just for the clarification of a neighbor to say, this is more than just a homeowner would have at their house? Like, can a homeowner have a backhoe in their house?
Absolutely, for personal use on the property.
Right.
If it's varying by the day or week, different equipment being stored, and it's not being used on the property, it raises the concern of, well, whose is it, and, you know, is it part of the business? It's difficult for us to tell when we just take a ride by, take a photo,
Right.
But certainly, you know, addressing that property line, and maybe putting conditions to that, so that there would be no encroachment or expansion onto that property would be reasonable.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
In terms of trying to make sure that there is a clear delineation between what a commercial
I'm
property is
understanding
in.
that everybody's trying to be fair about this. I
Yeah.
actually like Jesse and his wife a lot.
Yeah,
And and Jim approached me when my husband died and said he was a nice guy, and also feel very friendly, and I'm not real comfortable doing this.
Sure.
But it has been a problem for me, because I do feel like it has decreased my property value quite a lot.
And when you say there's more activity on the site, is it?
I can't tell exactly what it was. I was just mowing the lawn, and I saw that all of a sudden everything was brown, and there was a big piece of equipment. I can't identify the equipment.
No, more of just like sounds or.
There is more
you know.
sound. I believe there is. I can hear all outdoors more easily than I could.
Right.
But
Trees might have
maybe they
some.
have more, they're doing more commercial activity, and maybe that's why.
Well, I mean, the work is supposed to be isolated to the workshop necessarily. They're not necessarily allowed to start performing repair in the parking lot or in the storage area. That's not the intent for that. So, right?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they sell lawnmowers and chainsaws, so likely they demonstrate them outside. I think
Oh,
that-
absolutely. No, I mean, just like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know, heavy pounding or like where they're literally like jacking up stuff outside and, you know, doing all the repair activity outside. They're supposed to be doing it inside, technically.
Mainly, correct.
Okay. So I'm just trying to help just to make sure like you're identifying, like to make sure they aren't like
Yeah,
have
no.
50 lawnmowers apart on the driveway. I'm not suggesting you guys do, but just making sure that you understand that they should be running a business in the business, not necessarily all over the yard.
Yeah, I haven't seen it being run all over 241.
Okay, good.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Board members,
Thank
any
you.
questions?
Oh,
No? Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate you.
thank you.
Anyone else? Come on up. Good evening, Mr. Stone.
Good evening.
How are you? Please state and spell your name, please.
James Stone at 201 Torrey Road. I live next to Mrs. Montgomery, so I'm the second house down.
And just spell your last name.
Last name Stone, S-T-O-N-E.
Okay, excellent. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Excellent, thank you. So please,
I-
you wrote
A letter.
2 letters.
I did, but the
Okay.
last letter
And you'll summarize those both for us right now?
Well, they're both essentially the same. I'm concerned that the business is going over onto 241.
Okay,
They put out the chart that everybody's been referring to tonight.
yep,
I can't add up to 19,600 feet. I only come out with 16,000.
okay,
And where's the other 3,000 or 2,700 square feet?
okay. We can ask them that.
The map, I sent you the map. I'll be happy to tell you how I arrived at it. I just simply took the irregular space and divided it into 3 spots and said, okay, the first spot is 80 by 130, and the next spot is 80 by 60, and the last spot is approximately, the driveway area is approximately 19 by 82.
Yep.
And you come up with 16,758 square feet, not 19.6.
Okay,
And I think the source of all of this is that they're all using a tax map, which was done sometime in April. And
Okay.
a lot of work was done in May and June to
Right.
prepare for and that's when the fence was put up. That's, a lot of work was done then. And I
Right.
think the thing expanded. Where is the the extra 2,700 square feet?
Okay.
I don't have any idea. But my pictures which say it's extending over onto 241. But
Right.
that is
Yes.
simply that
Yeah.
I have I haven't gone back and measured it off, just,
shouldn't have to. That wouldn't be you. You don't have to do that. So, but in terms of their use of this, of the proposed property, use of the property, are you okay where the fences are? Like, is in the use of like how they're
well,
using
they've
it?
cleaned the property up, as one of the men said earlier. They've cleaned it up dramatically in the last 2 months.
Yep.
It remains clean, which
Yep.
is great. It was very bad for
Yep.
the prior 3 or 4 years. They opened up a driveway off of Torrey Road about 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know exactly when. They broke through a wall that was there and created the driveway, which is creating the parking area, which is called undeveloped here, but it's all, see this thing to the right there? That is all stone facing and everything else. They use it for parking. And that area is now essentially clean, but they have created further over the property line under 241. They got a parking area over there they've been using extensively until July 4th, and then everything got clean when they thought they were having a hearing in
Right,
first week of July.
right.
But
So-
my concern is where's the rest of the space? I mean, in other words, all these maps with the 22-foot setback don't equal 19,006. So I don't know where the space is that we're talking about here.
Okay, we can ask them about it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But you're saying that to the right, to the east, the southeast?
If you went to one of my photos, I don't know, Jamie, can you go to a photo on the end of my letter? It clearly shows where they've created a parking area to the right.
Right, so where it says approximate edge of pavement isn't actually the,
See right there, right on the right behind that tree? That is a very nice flat parking area that they've plowed in, and that was extensively used until July 1st. It's not being used right now.
and is that tree on that southeast corner?
That tree right there on the right, according to your Exhibit B from the December thing,
Yep.
that is approximately where the line is.
Okay,
Now, if you look straight back, you'll see the fence.
yep, that makes sense.
And-
Okay, so
and,
that's
you know,
that,
is that fence on one side or the other line? I have no idea.
so that's about 160 feet back or
Yeah,
so?
it's quite a ways back.
Yep,
Quite
okay.
a ways back.
So where they show a bunch of trees, which
Yeah.
is basically on that left side?
Yeah.
On this lot, okay. That makes sense, we
I
can
mean,
ask them about that.
See the 2 trucks parked back there with the 2 trees to the right of those 2 trucks?
Yep.
The line, if you look, Jamie and I were trying to figure it out, but I think the line goes right back through those 2 trees, right between the trees and the trucks. But
Where the cone is,
yeah,
like sort of right
yeah,
through the cone?
right over the cone and just keep going back.
To the 2 trees is basically
Yeah.
the property line?
Yeah,
Okay,
but that's a guess.
sure. That makes sense, okay.
But you see, the foreground here is where they open up the stone wall, and so that everything can go in that way.
Right, so I guess if they're proposing as this site plan is
Yeah.
drawn, that's not shown as parking. That's
No,
shown as.
that's clearly all developed. I mean,
Undeveloped. Okay.
That's clearly all developed land.
Okay, well, we can ask them to have it
Yeah.
to the site plan.
Yeah.
Now, if they were to limit it to the site plan as proposed,
In
do
other
you
words, to
have,
the 16,000 that it shows, yeah.
well,
But whatever's
the
there.
19,000 that they're saying, 16,000 you're saying. So we'll
Well,
figure out
I'm
which is
saying
which.
them, I'm just adding their numbers. I'm not
Right.
saying anything. I'm just adding their numbers up.
So so that 16, so if they stick to that 16 and stick to this site plan, is that something you're comfortable with?
I'm not comfortable with the extension of the business as a whole. This is a residential neighborhood.
Sure.
And they are taking what was the only commercial thing on the east side of Route 1. Granted, it is historical and everything else, and they are now expanding it down Torrey Road.
Right.
And that's where I get uncomfortable. And this to me is just the start of, I mean, the business is growing. They've got very successful businesses apparently.
Sure.
And obviously they're going to have to continue to expand.
Right.
And where are they going to expand? The property they own next door.
So, okay, but
Yeah, so that I'm not comfortable with the,
as proposed, you're not comfortable with
Yeah.
it? Because this doesn't look like
Yeah,
it's as proposed, but.
yeah, but I mean, I'm just not comfortable with the expansion that's taking place.
Right, right, so, would you, I mean, is it
In other words, is
a
there some way
smaller
to cut the
fence?
baby? Yeah, is there some way to make this thing so it's just a smaller and everybody says, okay, mea culpa?
I mean, it's just basically
we
trying to find a
thought-
happy
We
medium.
thought that in December, when you sent your notice out, and the notice, by the way, you said, what, 12,000 square feet? We're now up to 19, so the 7,000 have been added since you told them they were doing, what you were doing wasn't
Right.
right. I understand the need for the storage.
Mhm.
I've owned a ton of businesses in my life. I understand exactly what they're going through. But this is a residential neighborhood.
Sure.
And they have now cleaned it up. It looks a lot better. But I would prefer, once you do that, they're going to want the building. Their consultant talks about we should have a building, or we may have a building. They've talked about having the possibility of a building. The next thing you know, they're going to want to enclose the 19,000 or the 16,000 or whatever number you want.
Well, they'll have to come back,
Yeah.
so it'll,
I mean, it's the slippery slope is my.
No, I totally understand. I think it's just a matter now of trying to lock in a design
Yeah.
for this site. I mean, it didn't exist previously, and that's why it's hard to say what size that open area was. They had an open area, we just don't know how much. So it's just a matter of being reasonable to what they have going
They've been
on.
using it for years, absolutely. They've been using it for years. It's
Right,
been-
and I mean, so it's
And
just coming
I've
up
only lived there
with.
7 years, and they've been doing it for 7 years.
Yeah, yep, no, and it sounds like it certainly has changed in the past.
The only
You
thing
know.
that's changed is they've expanded it dramatically.
Right, okay. Okay.
Alrighty.
Board members, questions? No?
Thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you very much, good to see you. Oh, yeah, Mr. Tom.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Stone, oh, sorry.
Your house is on Torrey, you said?
Yeah, you got next house, there it is, right there. That's my house.
Your house is 201?
Yep, 201.
Okay.
So you got
All right.
myself, Mrs. Montgomery that just spoke, that's the house next to me, and then their house, 241.
Okay, 201. And do you have a visual line of sight
To them? No.
to that lot?
No, all you do is hear them.
You don't have a visual line of
No,
sight
I
to
just
it?
hear all that's why I know a great deal took place in May and June, is because they were plowing and doing everything to create this.
So it's not so much that it's unsightly on your line of sight, it's more the fact that you have a concern
Yes.
down the road
Yeah, absolutely.
of expansion.
Mrs. Montgomery's being impacted, and I'm the next guy to be
Okay.
impacted. That's,
All right, thank you.
yeah.
Anyone else out there want to speak on behalf of this petition, for or against? Okay, you guys want to add anything? Mr. Pimentel?
Yeah, so I obviously am working off a site plan that was provided to me too. It does appear that if you start breaking this site plan into like sections of a pie, maybe the number that is there maybe is overcalculated. What we're talking about is keeping everything within that fence line that's already been established. We're committed to that. As for to the driveway that was added, like I said, we're willing to commit to this plan here, and if we need to address that and plant or vegetate, whatever the board feels is required, that's what we're prepared and committed to do and to comply with this site plan.
So when it's designated as undeveloped, you're fine with saying that it's, not gravel and not a parking area, it's basically grassy area?
Correct? So this area here.
So the area outside of the fence line just being maintained as open space? How would you want to hear that?
Well, I think if the line is blurry and both properties are the same family owning it, I think there should be some form of visible barrier, whether it be a fence or vegetation, just to know, on a daily crossing line, is it over the line?
But how about is someone prohibited from putting gravel in if they don't want grass?
No, if they're using it as parking for vehicles, that becomes an issue.
So I would say this, because the subject property is the business itself, I think the reasonable conditions the board could potentially include, if the board is inclined to approve, they would have to be related to this property. I think you could require some kind of a boundary marker, fence, whatever it is, separation between the two, but I don't think the board could include conditions that are solely on the house in the back.
No, I'm not saying the house. I'm saying like that area on the east side, that undeveloped area that they said was parking lot. Right now, that. Right. So, no, I'm not saying on the private property they put a fence or trees up. It's basically saying this fenced area, inside this fenced area, can be a controlled, pervious surface. But then everything outside, and the parking lot could be paved, but
Okay.
everything outside of that is grass.
I understand. I think
Right.
if you want to define what that area is, the condition would require the applicant to submit a site plan showing, as-built, showing existing conditions. I think you could define it that way.
I mean,
Right, well, I think.
does it prevent someone from like paving their whole property?
It's not.
Not that I wanted to pave their whole property, but like when we say it's
Well,
undeveloped, does that
to our
mean
knowledge, that is
it can't be parked on?
shared.
Like it can't, am I making sense like this?
Do you see the line
in this spot?
of the driveway?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not
see?
pertinent.
This is supposed to be trees. I'm sorry.
It may not be pertinent to this application, but any increase of parking spaces in excess of 5 would require development plan review, planning board approval. So, moving equipment and maintaining your property, that wouldn't rise to a level, but putting down a surface and on a daily basis or weekly storing vehicles there, that's where you would run afoul.
Got it, okay.
And since you mentioned DPR, I don't know if the planning department was at all looped in when the zoning violation was issued. I don't think this board has to consider any potential issues there, but the applicant might be wise to reach out to planning to make sure nothing needs to be buttoned up or applied for on that end.
I guess all I'm trying to make sure of is that if we approve it based on this plan, that as it's written can be enforced, or as we designate it. So if we're saying it's undeveloped, do we know what undeveloped means? Is that simplified enough for you to know that it can't be anything but grass? Or,
I mean, perhaps the board could make a condition that the area identified as undeveloped not be used for parking, storage of vehicles, et cetera.
that'll be helpful. Okay. Am I going, am I all right in this questioning? I just want to make sure if we're going to designate use. Okay. All right, so let's talk about this then. So turn on your mic, and
Sure.
so we're talking about that southeast corner of the property, right?
Right.
That's adjacent to the
Yeah.
residential. Yep.
So that break in the stone wall has always existed there?
Sure. Well,
I mean, it's not something that we added.
okay. So, but it's written as here as undeveloped. So if it's
Right.
if it's a matter of just classifying it as a
I would
certain
say
use on the property.
access, because essentially, if you zoom out, for 241 property, there is no way to access the backyard of it. There's a septic system on the whole, like the left side of that, so the south side.
Well, 241 has its own.
Right, but
241 you can pave the whole property if
Sure.
you want to. That doesn't.
So
That's not
essentially-
really relevant here.
that line is right.
Never.
I hear what you're saying.
But really, it's just a matter of saying that if it says undeveloped. So in my mind, an undeveloped
It
area
doesn't look
means-
undeveloped, right.
Right. It's just grass is undeveloped. It's irrelevant if there was a stone wall there per se. It's just that it can't be used for anything other than undeveloped open space.
Can it be a shared access? Like if it's literally on a line, would it be a shared access?
It would need, you'd need to show it
Okay.
on the site plan for us to lock it in as how you're going to use the site.
Right.
But just keep in mind that
I hear you.
shared is tricky.
It's tricky, and I essentially that's why we're here,
Right.
because the line wasn't so clear until it
Sure,
became
until
clear.
it was cleaned up. Yep. No. And
So-
I think it sounds like that there's a desire to make sure that the commercial use is as not hidden but as obscured as possible from
Right.
residential. So I think it seems like, and we'll certainly find out from the board, but it seems like that we want to make sure that delineation
I
exists.
think the challenge is of planting 2 trees in particular on this map is it blocks all access to the back half of their property to maintain, to do anything.
Right. So
So
I
it
think
would all be access from the front. Maybe like I guess the height of these trees aren't really, is that?
Or even if we just, because the point is, the concern is that it's being used for driveway purposes and storage purposes.
Right.
Even if it was just a grassed area, so that it's not being used for commercial purposes.
Right, that could happen. Yeah, that would.
It just, as Mr. Gorman was saying, you just want to make sure it doesn't become a permanent storage or it doesn't become
Right.
something that's used on a regular basis.
Yeah.
If I drive on my grass all the time, it's just a matter of, I
Right.
sound horrible, like I'm going to pave everything and drive on grass. But no, it's really just a matter of making sure that there's a clear delineation between the commercial property and the residential. And I don't think it's either us designing it for you guys or perhaps we get something that says this is how we're going to.
I think grass is really fitting for
Okay.
the nature of the business.
Okay.
I mean, it's grass.
I mean, if you guys want to get through it all tonight, then we can sort of help devise what that organic material will be like. That's going to help delineate the commercial from residential.
So obviously, when we talk about storage, vehicle parking, we want not to be a visual obstruction to the neighbors. That's the commitment. We want to make sure that
Yep.
they're happy with and satisfied because that they're entitled to that.
Yep.
And obviously, we have laws and regulations, so we want to satisfy the board and Mr. Gorman. So that's why we made sure we defined the fence line because it's there. It was a definitive feature.
That's right.
obviously, you start calculating the pieces of pie, the number is over-exaggerated. It's probably closer to the 16,000, as Mr. Stone has indicated. I think what happens when somebody calculated, they just did a perfect square, not subtracting out that piece of the pie. That's down below.
You want a little better than ish on
So-
these drawings, but,
So,
okay.
that being said, whatever that number is, we're saying that it's within that fine line of where it says fenced,
Okay.
right? And then the concerns being that where it says undeveloped, and I understand, so obviously, a neighbor seeing undeveloped, it goes, then why is it being used for the commercial purposes?
Correct.
Because you're asking for dimensional relief. It's gotta be specific, but it doesn't show like it's reflected in that area. So we're committing grassed area, not gonna be driven over, maintained. The driveway will access the storage area. We park the vehicles in the driveway, behind the fence line, in the building, and off the grass.
Yes, I think it sounds like maintaining a buffer, and is vital.
And then what is existing trees and forests now, other than sometimes things have to be pruned, we will maintain, and to whatever is reasonable, try to enhance the fence line with some shrubbery and stuff, because it'll soften, right? With whatever's permitted, given constraints of the property too. We're willing to accept that as well.
Is there, on the northern side of the property, is there a fence on that side, or is it just transition right to the,
No, there's even a
that
gate.
grassy knoll?
No, there's fence all around, even a gate towards the front. It's just a matter of closing the gates at night.
Like all the way to the north? Like the edge of your property, is that defined by fences or anything like that? Like
Stone
up there?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I don't-
Stone wall.
A stone
It's a
wall.
stone wall?
Oh,
Okay.
I was misunderstanding.
And then down the east side, is that a stone wall that stops at some point, or that's just, you can walk from one to the other?
He's talking about here.
Yeah.
There is not a stone wall on the line.
So
There's a
there's really
stone
nothing
wall.
separating those two properties, other
Nope.
than the vegetation at the time?
There's,
There's some stone wall?
well, if you zoom out, the stone wall is, you can see it's further.
Okay, so,
There's a wooded, the trees is really what's there.
okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you're saying you're gonna enclose the fenced area, and then it's just a matter of determining if we wanted to have something separating the residential from the commercial property, and then any vegetation.
Put a fence
So,
here too.
Right, there is a buffer, right, there's a buffer, majority of it's on the 241.
I guess the only concern that I bring to the board's attention is I think trying to preserve all those mature trees and try to weave a fence in there, but I don't know what the impact would be.
Yeah.
that's why I don't, I want to be, that's why I'm asking is, what can delineate those two properties? Is it vegetation buffer better than a fence? Is it both difficult or impossible? Possible? What is it?
Both are difficult, yeah, because the trees that are mature, that don't give access to digging to plant, but there is a good amount of saplings that are growing up to create a lower coverage amongst, it's thicker.
I mean, because it sounds like that there was a time where some of that buffer did provide sound barriers to the folks to the east, and I know that it's a cycle of,
Right.
you cut
We
things
have
down,
noticed,
they grow
yeah,
back in
I
10
know.
years. So I think we'll just have to, I guess we'll talk amongst ourselves. Unless you're suggesting anything you can do to delineate them besides like painting a line on the ground. Is there a way to sort of just have some
I would
sense as
say,
to?
what the neighbor's done, which looks really good, and I'd love if he could give me a hand. He made some juts out in the stone wall,
Okay.
and so that it's clear and it's decorative. It looks really nice.
Right.
So he kind of came out, like teed off the stone wall.
Right.
So you could, and then maybe some additional, there's a lot of rocks. Maybe we could,
So
and then-
are you saying you'd be willing to eventually slowly put up a stone wall
Yeah.
between the two?
yeah, it would kind of, we have,
Right, that's why I'm asking. That's why I say
the-
slowly too.
yeah, it's,
All right.
over time is kind of like a single stacked wall. over time. I mean, it's, to do a containment wall is another.
Right, we're not asking the Berlin. So, okay, let's, all right, so I think we have some ideas. We'll obviously talk with you guys and see if there's more. Yeah, well, wait, we have some questions from board members, so don't go away.
Couple of questions. If we go back to the site plan just for a moment. The eastern property line that you show, is that a surveyed line? Is it an estimated line? What is it, Mr. Pimentel?
No, it's not. So I contracted a designer. He did the drawings based off of the town's GIS. That was a courtesy. That was
Okay, so
reluctantly allowed by Mr. Gorman. I see why now. But just because the relief we're seeking was a pre-existing fence.
So that property line is clearly a delineation between 241 and the applicant, is that correct?
Correct.
That you show on the site plan?
Correct.
Okay. So if this board were to approve and impose a condition that there should be no incursion beyond the existing property line as shown on the site plan into the residential area by any equipment, storage, et cetera, would that be an acceptable condition?
Yes, it would.
Thank you.
Okay. You're so pragmatic. It's excellent. I love it.
I mean, it solves it.
Yeah, it really does. I don't know, you should switch seats. So, okay, anything, other questions? Yeah, Ms. Hicks.
Okay, so many issues going on here at
Sure.
one time. You indicated there's been a real effort on the part of the property owners to clean things up. Now, we heard from Mrs. Montgomery, who left, that suddenly there's some new piece of equipment that's appeared at 241. What is that?
Yeah, that one I'm not familiar with, to be honest.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know if you know. So, say it
Yeah,
again.
what piece of equipment has, according to Mrs. Montgomery,
Mrs. Montgomery, so-
appeared now on 241, is being stored at 241?
So it's not being stored. I'm in the process of, to beautify the 241, because it was very unclear for me if creating plantings and upkeeping the property was on the 241 or if we were talking about the business. So I'm clearing vines, again, trimming trees, cleaning up the ground, and there's holes over time and the rocks grow up, so it's plucking the rocks, screening it clean, actually similar to some of our neighbors' properties. They groom it all and they plant grass, and I think the more trees and plants, young trees, will produce way more oxygen and create a better buffer than mature trees. But I noticed that a lot of neighbors have kind of cleared their properties, and I think that's the bigger, that's what's bringing the noise in. They got rid of their own buffer.
What was this piece of equipment? Was it a dumpster? You're putting this?
I was scraping back
Yeah, but Mrs.
vines.
Montgomery referenced a piece of equipment.
Yeah, that's mine, personal.
Well, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, so it's farm equipment, so a tractor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's just cleaning up the vegetation, just so you don't get poison ivy,
Okay.
and just keeping it clean so I could fix the rocks and the holes.
Okay. So my next question is for you, Mr. Pimentel. I had asked you to define the 19,600 square feet, and you referenced the fence. I'm glad Mr. Stone mentioned it, because when I calculated the area inside the fence, I did not get 19,600. So that's why I asked you to define it, because I thought maybe it included something other.
No, I didn't prepare the site plan, so I'm going off a calculation that was given me. I didn't go there and break it up like we did today. I'm assuming that who's preparing the site plan is doing it accurately, because I'm not going to put my name to something I didn't prepare it, but I'm taking it as factual information, so. But it obviously isn't.
So
that
I may be
number.
shooting the messenger, but I did ask you to define
No,
it, and
no,
you
I
said the
understood.
fence.
So I'm assuming that number was an accurate number, but it obviously is not, but like I said.
Yeah.
It's like I can't speak to law, I can't speak to a lot of fields of expertise, so I gotta rely on other documents. That is also a reason why I also relied and asked for the continuance, because then I went back and followed up, and that's why I gave a second report, by the way. I wanted to follow up and say, let me do a little more investigation into the aerials, because that is what I do, a lot of, to see if we can't come up with maybe a more precise number. Obviously, at least I was able to document that there's been some open storage historically. But once again, honestly, I couldn't put a number to that, and I'm not about to. Even on the aerials, you can take the measuring. That's how sophisticated it is. But it's on a computer screen, and I'm not going to put my name to that because I don't know. But I'm taking the site plan as being accurate, so I don't. It obviously wasn't, so.
Okay, so my question 3 would be for you folks. If the application request is for an inaccurate number, how do we proceed? I mean, we can't approve the wrong number. Do we have to ask them to submit an accurate site plan? Do we?
The condition could be that, if the property owner is willing to allow myself or staff to measure out the fence, walk the fence, and although I believe we get a more accurate number doing it that way rather than using an aerial tax map measurement.
Here's what I would suggest. We have numbers that have been advertised. They're on the agenda. We have to, and the applicant, if the board grants this petition, the applicant would have to live by those numbers. And if there's a condition that the numbers be verified by the building official and somehow it doesn't match, I think they need to come back. So I think it's up to the applicant to let the board know, are they willing to take that potential risk, if there's any, or just live within the bounds? Because what it comes down to is the board needs to be specific on what the quantum of variance you're giving when anytime square feet are involved, and the neighbors and the public need to be properly advised as well.
So, Mr. Gorman, if we gave you this plan with this fence dimensions and we say that the square footage has to be verified, but we're going to go off of the measurements that are provided on the drawing.
I guess I'll ask Amy, so if it was a smaller number that was determined than what was advertised?
If it's smaller, if the relief needed ends up being less than what the board approves and less than the advertised number, that's fine.
Thank you. All right, is there anything else? Any other questions, board members? No?
Okay, wait, I'm still confused.
Yeah, sure.
So we would, in our deliberation, we would consider that 19,600 number.
The applicant has said they're accepting that and they're relying on that, or at least they don't have another number to put forward other than that number.
But does that mean that they could then move the fence and expand to the 19,600?
No, I think what the board would have to be specific that the relief would be granted up to that number, or, a lesser number as determined by the building official. And that can be worded probably more eloquently, but I think the board can, an approval could limit it below the maximum number that we have on the agenda.
Because at some point, Mr. Gorman will put something in the record that then could be pulled up to say that this is the size back in 2024, right? And it won't necessarily be our decision, it'll be another document.
I mean, perhaps a maximum of 19,600, but to be verified by the building official. And if it's less,
or we could say it's 16,800.
It's up to what the board wants to do. I would only just suggest, usually for an applicant, you don't want to expend town resources doing something that really their own design professional should do. So, we have to make it clear. He would verify rather than, perform, do the engineering or measure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just to follow up to Ms. Hicks' question, and I think it's a good one. If we were to approve 19 change and the building official does his work and comes up with 16, then they've got 3,000 more they can go to expand their fence line and continue on. I'm not comfortable with that.
Unless you make it an either or, you know, the lesser of the first number or what's there now.
So we can.
All right,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yes, Mr. Stone. So, yeah, so, you know, it's making sure that all the work is confined to the property that's proposed. So I think I think what happens on the site next door happens on the site next door as long as it's not commercial activity.
And that is potentially a separate issue for the town to enforce at some point down the road.
So it's keeping an eye on that adjacent property. If it's not being used as a residential property, then it's in violation of the zoning code.
Well, if we stipulate that, then it's a part of
Shouldn't have, I mean, it's just implied. I mean, in the sense, I mean, and I think the path we were going down is to not be, well, I don't want to get in your head, but you were just, the violation was only on the commercial property, it wasn't on the residential property.
That's correct.
I'll just keep it at that. Okay. Yes, Mr. Pimentel.
I thought I'd gone on. Mr. Chairman, we want to put everybody's mind at ease. I'm in agreement with Ms. Hicks. It was kind of embarrassing to work up a plan. It's not a Class 1 survey plan. I come before boards and commissions. I'm usually working with Class 1s. We want this board to have accurate information.
Right.
We want the neighbors to know exactly what we're proposing, so they feel they have confidence in what we're doing. We want to ask for a continuance to get a Class 1 survey done.
So, okay, so why don't we just do one thing, and, I mean, can we just have a discussion between us? And maybe we can see what we're thinking?
Okay.
That maybe can help sort of what that plan could become.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Does that work? You okay with that?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, excellent. All right, so, what's everybody thinking? I mean, Mr. McDonald, you wanna start off and tell us what you're thinking?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. I think you need the Class 1 survey. I mean, going around trying to guess what the numbers are is not fair to the residents that are around there. There should be some delineation between the commercial property and that homeowner's property. However that is going to be done, it can easily be done with markers, or it could be done with something that delineates it, because right now it appears that it's not. And as far as the undeveloped land, you know, that should absolutely stay undeveloped if that's how it's indicated, and the grass or whatever materials they need for that. But I think what I've seen on this site plan and some of the pictures is not really what I've seen out there right now. So I think we're trying to make a decision on a lot of different pieces of information that's, in my personal opinion, is not accurate or up to date. So,
Thank you. Ms. Hicks?
Well, excuse me, I've driven by the property a number of times, and I've noticed the fence now from the road, and I find the fence to be a, basic, attractive fence. I don't have a problem with the height of it, as long as you don't suddenly start putting cranes, inside the fence or something that's really going to be taller than the fence. And based on the size of the property, I would be probably okay approving the current fence. What I can't do is approve an unknown number. So since that 19.6 is wrong, I don't like the idea, it's just me, I don't like the idea of saying 19.6 or something else. I want an accurate number, and I also want to make sure that there's no commercial activity going on at 241 Torrey Road. That, anything that is permitted, like if you're using a tractor to clean up your property, I don't think anybody would object to your property being cleaned up, your neighbors, but the tractor, you know, it needs to be there for a purpose and then maybe disappear. I don't know what the legality of that is, but certainly your commercial vehicles should not be stored at 241. So I still think there are some things that need to be further clarified before I'm comfortable voting.
In terms of any vegetative separation? Or some,
Exactly.
either fence or vegetative
Yep,
separation
yep,
between the two?
yep. More information about how we're going to, you know, delineate the two properties.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Dupont?
Things I'm a little bit cautious of is, and not concerned with, but I guess my question is, we keep getting between the two properties only because they're owned by the same people. If there were different owners here and there was that residential piece of property, we would not probably be discussing that, nor would we probably have the authority, unless they were in violation of something, to even make any judgment on them. I'm just bringing that up forth. So the other thing is the square footage that we seem to be kind of stuck on a little bit with that 16,000 or 19,000 square feet. And I understand the Class 1 survey. Right now, I don't even know when a survey can get out there. My business is 2 to 3 months or longer. So it's going to delay whatever it is we're going to have to do here. My concern is that if the total square footage is wrong, but the footprint with the dimensions are correct, if we specify something stating whether it's an approval or what have you, within those dimensions, then what's the difference? See what I'm saying?
Just knowing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if it's 10,000 feet or 12,000 feet, it's those dimensions that we're showing, and that's what they're asking for relief from.
That's right.
So,
Yep.
I mean, I think
It might not change anything.
it might not change a darn thing.
Correct. Yep.
So I think more concern is the neighbor's viewpoint here of what they have in terms of line of vision. That's why I asked that gentleman that. And if they can't see it, and if you have a business there that seems to be contributing to the town of North Kingston and the other residents of South Kingstown, and they comply with all the requests that we're going to ask for, then I think it should be considered possibly to be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. Any other thoughts?
Only that I would be comfortable with continuance, another continuance. This has been going on since December, I believe, of last year. And if the owners are willing to get a survey and get a proper number, then I would be comfortable with that. At the moment, I'm not comfortable in approving this under the conditions that have been discussed here and the disagreement in what is going on between
How it's changed.
the objectors and the owners, in addition to how to differentiate whether 241 is even involved in this.
Sure.
Which it shouldn't be. So I'm on the continuance side.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Daniels?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with my colleagues to the right, and I also agree with accepting Mr. Pimentel's offer. Let's continue this, let's get it right, and then come back and seek your approval, which I think this board would be inclined to do with the proper information. Thank you.
Excellent. So I don't know how much it helped, but I think you kind of get some senses that we're looking to make sure that there is a clear delineation between the two properties. I think, it seems like the sentiment wasn't necessarily to say that they're a permanent nuisance. I think it's just a matter of trying to manage it so that the commercial activity can sort of stay on that property and stay confined to as proposed.
Sure. And so that we will also have a very accurate, specific number of what that area is that's contained within that fence line, so the board knows the specific relief that you're granting.
Right.
And then you also know what the respective distance to property boundaries are and so forth.
Yes. Yep, that'll be really helpful. And I think, you know, some thoughts as to sort of maintaining some vegetative buffers as well. I mean, this is just me saying that, but I think just thinking about it, just because if it's going to be a separation between, you know, the two, like anything that'll sort of help sort of create that just sound and visual buffer.
Is there like the noise is pretty limited to in the building?
Good.
Like, so where would the noise be? Where we buffer?
Well, I just know a lot was taken out. So
A
no?
lot of the tree coverage was really tall. I think
Okay.
if you zoom even further out, you would see like a lot of the properties are wide open fields.
Sure.
They become more fields.
I think,
We have noticed more noise from the neighbors as well.
yeah.
I just think that the buffering is a challenge because it's, what are we buffering?
Okay.
And the trees, as the branches fall, we're fixing, the bufferage is, like, when you look at neighboring properties, it's fields, and there's just like maybe some short shrubs that aren't doing any buffering.
Well, just keep that in mind then when you guys present it to us. Just say, this is the
Right.
challenge, like, this is everything we're trying to do to delineate the two properties.
So,
But-
a visual delineation is, and an auditorial one seems challenging, because what are we buffering the road, the highway for, you know, like, what is the purpose?
I understand. Like, I know how challenging it is. I'm thinking it is somewhat of a buffer, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your responsibility to be that buffer. So I can respect that, but I think just making sure that there is a, you know, we're changing use and there is a separation between the two.
So the difficulty part of this is obviously obtaining a survey, because they're all very busy. Would it work to the board if we request a 60-day continuance, but somehow, if we need more time, we can still get it continued to a date certain so that we don't incur another expense for another meeting, you know, after we
No,
notice?
I think we can be reasonable and to say that's based on your ability to complete the survey.
Okay.
The only thing that we would request, I would request, I'm not sure if Mr. Gorman would as well, but just kind of continue what you're doing in terms of maintaining the property and continue the improvements. I think that there's been a noticeable difference by the neighbors. You know, and I think if we're going to end up sort of to what you're proposing here, it's to pretty much what you have now. So it's just setting that example to say, next time you're here, that exactly what you see is what it will be for the
Very
next
good.
30 years.
Thank you.
So the October meeting date is October 16th, which is less than 60 days, and I don't know if the applicant and the board would prefer to continue it to 10/16 or to the November meeting date, which is 11/20.
November would probably be safer? Or you think you can do it within 6?
If you get somebody to call you back.
Oh.
So if it were, I mean, if we did put it in as the 16th, I mean, you could just let us know in the next 3 weeks that it's
You get
not the
somebody else to do it
16th,
in
it could be the November
October
20th, right?
I know.
Unless they know a surveyor, I think it'd just save everybody the hassle and put it
Say
on for
November.
November.
Okay. November, what did you say, 20th?
I've got a conflict in that week.
You have a conflict that
Yeah,
week?
Yeah. December, okay?
Everybody all right with December?
What's the December date?
I think that would obviously be with the understanding of continued good faith efforts.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, I think that's the key in all this.
It's a week before Christmas.
I
Maybe
mean,
we'll get a gift.
I mean, you guys read the letters, you know, to us, and it was a pretty consistent sort of concern. So, okay, so we're looking at December 18th?
Well, I just want to make sure the neighbors know what's potentially happening here, since they
Please.
don't have an attorney. The agenda had 2 items on tonight. One was the business's request for relief from the zoning ordinance, right? That would essentially legalize what they're doing now. So if the board grants that in December or at some point down the road, the appeal is considered moot, because the goal of the violation is to bring the property into compliance. And if the board grants relief, that goal has been achieved. So the violation is still out there, it's still pending, but now what's pending and what is, I think, more significant to the applicant and to the neighbors is, what can they do to satisfy the board that the relief is appropriate and won't harm the neighborhood? So I'm sure they'll be in touch with you over the next few months.
Not that I'm suggesting a dark turn, but let's say for some reason in the next few months it gets worse, right? So does that mean that the notice of violation can be sort of
If it gets worse, either a new notice of violation
Okay.
could be issued, and more importantly, I think the applicant is not going to want to come back to you if conditions
Well.
don't either stay the same or improve. So,
So, and this is not going to be, there's not going to be a notice, right?
correct. If we continue it tonight to the December meeting date, there would be no new advertisement or notice to abutters.
So it would be based on us visiting between now and then, neighbors, and the word of the applicant to know if they've been behaving well.
Yep.
And okay. So it's letting everybody know and all the neighbors know. I know Mr. Fetzer also wrote a letter, who's not here, that to see the final design. Will it be posted, the final design?
Yeah, they
will
would
be
need to submit
in the agenda
materials
meeting.
in advance of the meeting.
So the idea is that a couple weeks or so before the meeting, by the beginning of December-ish,
Yep.
that you'll see the plan, all right? And it'll be online. You can even call the office. December. We're talking December 18th for the next for the meeting, all right? So keep eyes out, and hopefully we can get this worked out.
And that would also give the applicant time possibly to begin a conversation with the planning department, because one of the applicant's potential other alternative suggestions was a zone change. And I think, you know, if you contact the planning department, if they like that idea, you know, the board, yeah. But if they shut you down on that, I think that's something else for the board to know.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Did you want to add anything else?
No, sir.
Oh, okay, great. So, all right, so we're looking at continuing the matter of 4060 Tower Hill Road till December 18th, pending the completion of a site plan.
Right, and that would be both matters, both the petition for the special use permit and the variance, and the appeal of the notice of violation.
Duly noted that it is for the 2 continuations to be continued until December 18th. And so they will be listed as the same, in the same order, essentially as they are now. Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Daniels. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys' time and effort. And thank you to everybody in the neighborhood. Good to see you, Mr. Stone. All right. Now, there's one other matter. They never showed up. Do we give them a continuation, or do we,
No affidavit of mailing was provided, correct?
And I did reach out to them via email last week, and I've heard nothing back from them.
I think, given that a notice of violation has also been issued on this matter, I think the board can deny it without prejudice, or you could choose to consider the application without live testimony. It's up to the board. If you deny it without prejudice, they could reapply. They would need to start the process over again, meaning a new application with a new application fee and advertising. I think that would be the fairest way to handle it for someone who fails to show up.
So deny with prejudice, so.
Without prejudice.
Okay, so do I have to read it into the record as if we're opening up the, yes?
Yes, because a decision would be recorded.
Okay. Next is the petition of Lawrence G. Hepson of 106 North Road, Wakefield, Rhode Island, 02879, for a dimensional variance under the zoning ordinance as follows. The applicant is seeking to retain a 40-foot recreational boat on the premises. The maximum boat length permitted to be stored in the residential zone is 30 feet. Therefore, a 10-feet relief is requested. Lot size is 0.36 acres. Dimensional variance is required. Per the zoning ordinance, section 503.6, parking or storage of major recreational equipment in residential district, and section 907 are standards of relief. The owner of the property is Lawrence Hepson for a premises located at 106 North Road, South Kingstown, Assessors Map 49-1, lots 114 and 115, and is zoned R40. And for this petition, we have the application signed and dated July 12th, 2024, owner authorization form signed and notarized July 12th, 2024, one photo, 200-foot radius map, legal notices. And then we do not, do we have, okay, we do not have the notarized affidavit of mailing. And is anyone here for this petition? Nope, no one is here. So we do not have the affidavits of mailings, nor has anyone showed up.
And I think you can make a motion to deny, not on the merits, but because the applicant failed to appear before the board, which is a requirement.
Without anyone here, looks like we're gonna, I'll make a motion to deny the application because the applicant has not showed up, and we will deny it without prejudice. And yeah, because they haven't showed up. So can I get a second? Second by Mr. Daniels. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Cagnetta, aye. Mr. Daniels? Aye. Mr. DuPont? Aye. Mr. Rosen? Ms. Hicks?
Aye.
Motion is denied. Okay. So next we have is this right? The July 17th, 2024 minutes. Any changes, alterations, anything? Concerns? None? Okay. So moved by Mr. Rosen. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Roll call for next month. Is everybody going to be here? The 18th? Yes?
September 18th.
I know, right? Okay. Any other business that we have to cover? No. Look at that. Start early, end early. All right. Thank you. Motion adjourned? Or motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
So move. All right. All in favor? Excellent.